It's official. There is a new best 1440p gaming monitor in town. Once again, it's a OLED, a 1440p 540Hz Tandem OLED called the ASUS PG27AQPW-W RXTV. Horrible name aside, which I will mention every single time until ASUS fixes this. Like seriously, there are 11 27-inch OLED monitors now. It's impossible to know which model is what at this point. This is ASUS's latest and greatest 1440p OLED gaming monitor. It features a Tandem W OLED panel with MLA Plus technology, which is the new 4th gen tech, and it is absolutely amazing and makes me think that if you did buy the 480Hz last gen 1440p panel, you might be feeling a little stupid right about now. And that's because this panel improves on that last gen greatest panel in almost every single way. Number one is that screen brightness. In SDR, the brightness has improved, and in HDR, the peak brightness has as well. In day-to-day, real-world use, gaming, doing work, watching YouTube videos, it's just more versatile. You don't have to close the curtains shut tightly to make sure that you can see the screen comfortably. And so long as there's no direct sunlight beaming hard on the screen still feels quite bright and quite enjoyable that I don't have to turn off the lights in my room to feel like the screen is good, which is great. And of course, in HDR, that increase in peak brightness means contrast is punchier, more vibrant, and more exciting than ever before. Not only is that peak single spot brightness higher, that peak sustained brightness is a lot better in HDR as well, which means, well, better performance overall. And there is an improvement in clarity, and this comes from two main changes. Not only is the panel now glossy, using ASUS's rather excellent true black glossy glass coating, which doesn't haze up like the glass on the QD OLED panels, which means it doesn't diffuse surrounding light, making your black suddenly look grey, which I'm not the biggest fan of. But that glossy coating also makes the screen look punchier, more contrasty, and most importantly, sharper, since it doesn't diffuse or distort light with a matte finish. Sure, there are going to be people that still want a matte coating, but if you're going to spend all that money on an OLED and have all its beauty, do not dilute it with a matte coating. I just think it's not a very sensible thing to do. The second thing that improves the clarity of the screen is the sub-pixel layout that has been revised to a more traditional RGWB layout, which is a lot closer in line to LCDs, and that means better text clarity, better sharpness, and just a better viewing experience overall. One of the things the QD OLED panels that were 2nd gen were, in my opinion, better than the 3rd gen OLED panels at was the sharpness. And that's because the QD OLED panels didn't have as weird or distorted of a sub-pixel layout, which meant that graphics and visuals were more optimized and things look clearer, lines look sharper and crisper. Well, that's no longer an issue on these 4th gen Tandem OLEDs, it just is sharper and crisper, which combined with that glossy finish makes for a new feeling, improved viewing experience over the last gen W OLEDs. Then there is the improvements in performance. Now this one is not really that significant. It's a 60Hz bump from 480Hz to 540Hz, which is not noticeable by any means, but it's always nice to have. And it now has a dual mode for this particular monitor that does 720Hz, but at a resolution of 720p. I personally think this mode is just a marketing feature. It's completely useless, because that drop in resolution is just so significant that you might as well have 200 less Hertz and enjoy the higher sharpness and clarity that would actually benefit your gameplay experience, enjoyment, and performance much more than the 200 FPS would. Of course, just like basically every OLED and QD OLED panel that's released these days, the colors are absolutely phenomenal. They're not quite as saturated or punchy as QD OLEDs still, but they are better than the last gen W OLEDs. Maybe because of the coating, maybe because of a better panel technology, but whatever it is, it looks a little bit more exciting, a little bit more vibrant, and it still covers basically the entirety of all the color spaces you would want, DCI-P3 sRGB, with excellent color accuracy that you can actually use it for color grading and color work. Combined with such amazing colors, HDR, movies and gaming is amazing, and of course, day-to-day gaming and doing work is better than ever, which is just wonderful. And all the other accoutrements that you expect on an ASUS ROG gaming monitor continue to exist. You get all the features that you want, from the new Neo proximity sensor that turns off the monitor when you stand up and get away from the monitor so that it doesn't stay on for too long and cause burn-in, which is pretty cool, but not something that I really use that often. to ELMB that halves the refresh rate but inserts a black frame in every other image, which does halve the refresh rate and limit the brightness a little bit, but does insert a black frame every other frame, which is kind of like backlight strobing on an LCD. It significantly improves motion clarity, but at a lower refresh rate. But it's not really necessary anyway, because, well, it's an OLED, and it already has excellent motion clarity thanks to a pixel response time of 0.02, 0.03 milliseconds, which is very, very crisp to begin with. Of course, with ELMB things look a little bit clearer, but because you're running at a lower refresh rate, it does kind of balance out in terms of total clarity and smoothness. If you're running a game that you can only run 200, 300 FPS consistently in, turning on ELMB is a good idea. But if you're running a game that can be run at 540 FPS consistently stable, like Valorant or Counter-Strike with a good PC though, you should just leave ELMB off and run it at its full refresh rate, because it's still a smoother, clearer experience that way. Now, if you don't need 540 Hz and 540 frames per second, ASUS also sells this panel, but limited to 280 Hz refresh rate in the XG27 version of this monitor. It's also got the great glossy coating, similar color performance from what I understand, and some similar brightness performance from what I understand. So if you want the advantages of this new Tandem OLED technology without spending extra money on refresh rate and frames that you don't need, that is probably the model to get for most people, since, as far as I know, most people still don't care about 500 Hz. All in all then, this is basically the best 1440p gaming monitor, which is pretty obvious since it's an upgrade over the last best 1440p gaming monitor. I think the key improvement here with the OLED being brighter and the text clarity being a lot better makes it so that this monitor kind of takes OLED from the best choice with some drawbacks to essentially just the hands down best choice for 95% of people if you are looking for the best of the best. With the exception of crazed lunatics that need 1000 nits in SDR just for day-to-day use because they hate their corneas, new Tandem OLED panels are really the greatest so far. But if you already have the 480 Hz, there's no need to upgrade since OLED technology is progressing so quickly that by the time your WOLED starts burning in, it probably will be even crazier and even cheaper.